We are live. Welcome to a Club PF Masterclass. This is our big monthly event, and we have no one better than Melissa Moody with us. And so, I'm Melissa. I'll let you introduce yourself in a second, but you're someone that I've followed for years on LinkedIn. I loved obviously your whole gated story. I know we've talked a bunch about just a variety of things, but I'm really excited for this. I was super grateful when you were like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do this because I think that you have so many incredible insights to share with other people, especially about like this specific topic. So I'll let you introduce yourself. I'll go on mute. For everyone that's joining, just a little housekeeping. We have on the right-hand side of the screen your chat tab. So there's a chat tab. Feel free to chat. Feel free to ask anything in there. If you want to ask a question, put it in the Q&A section. Throughout the entire conversation, I'll kind of interrupt Melissa and I'll basically just ask her the questions. And those are really the big two that we're going to focus on today. So, Melissa, the stage is yours, and I'll be here to support you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Thanks so much, Nick. It was super nice to, get to actually work on something together. As you said, you and I have chatted about a lot of things. So I'm always someone who's up for good conversation, always someone who's up for talking about good marketing. And yeah, when Nick and I sat down to discuss what topic would be most appropriate, it was no surprise that we threw out about 10 ideas. And then we decided to kind of go down this route. So I'm very excited to talk today about the way that product and marketing align, both at large companies, small companies, and everything in between. I spend a lot of my day focused purely on marketing, but the engine that runs that effort and the way that I think about marketing is all driven by a very close connection to product. So it's very much the topic I was excited to chat about today. Shall I get going, Nick?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, I put on the chat, like you can use even the chat if it's easier to just drop your questions in there. Feel free to do that. This is being recorded. The majority of people do listen on demand as well. So if you have questions as you're listening to this right now, ping Melissa on LinkedIn. She's not going to bite your head off. Like she'll be very, very receptive to that. But for those that are live, feel free to ask your questions live. We'll get those answered too.
Yes, bring them on. So I wanted to start with a little bit of a story, and it all begins with brainwashing. I want to give a little spin to that, which is not only does it begin with brainwashing, but I'm going to talk about why I'm grateful for that brainwashing. So to set the scene, I started first working at Google back in 2007. And before I even started working there, I want you to think about Google in 2007. It was a steam train. Worldwide, I think there were about 16,000 employees, which feels pretty huge. Well, that's nothing compared to where we are today with 182,000-ish worldwide at Google. So if you think about Google in 2007, it was already rolling. This was a company that was not in startup stage. It was growing fast. We had candy on the tables and volleyball courts outside. It was the Google of everybody's mind, right? This is what you think of when you think of, oh, it's great to work at Google. Well, I actually interviewed and worked my entire career in our Seattle office. And when I interviewed at Google, that office was 30 people. So all of a sudden you have this small company within this larger company. And that's the environment that I walked into in 2007. Now, when I first interviewed, I actually interviewed for roles that sat in the engineering org and in the sales org. I interviewed in two completely different tracks. Context is I was coming from a role outside of the tech world. So my skill set, we were thinking about, does it apply in the engineering side or in the sales side? And what was really interesting is I heard similar threads in both the engineering and the sales org, which in a lot of companies are night and day. While one of those orgs wanted to know about my understanding of search and how engineering foundation is core to a company, and how, really, there was a lot of talk about early products like search and Gmail, things of that nature. The other interview that I had really wanted to talk about my ability to create partnerships and find a space within the market for these new tools. So here I am sitting between engineering and sales, but that one thing kept coming up on both sides. And it really seemed like the one thing that everybody I interviewed in that long interview process wanted to talk about. It was the first point in Google's philosophy at that time. So I threw up the 9-year logo. That's how old Google was in 2007. It was 9 years old. This is their birthday logo. But Google has a philosophy. It's still right there on the website. You can go and read all of the 10 things. But there was this list of, excuse me, 10 things we know to be true. And the first one I got asked about in almost every interview. It's the one you see here right at the bottom. It's focus on the user and all else will follow. So it gets across this main idea that everything they're doing is in service to the user. The language that comes below that even goes so far as to point out, we are not here for the advertisers. We are here for the users. Not only is it one of the 10 things, it is the very first thing in their entire listed philosophy. And this phrase wormed its way into every interview. It wormed its way into my brain. It became a mantra in the first probably 5 years of my time there. I literally still have this running through my brain every day. Focus on the user and all else will follow. It's become, I know it as well as some of the bedtime songs I sing my children. It's still in my head. I don't even want to count how many years we are after 2007. I can't do that heavy math today. But I went on to spend a full almost 14 years at the company. And for the first few years, I heard this a lot. I heard it a lot. In the conversations we had with our partners, it would be in slides. In the actual work we did with the engineering teams on the products that were being developed, it was put forth as a common mantra. Later years, I'll be honest, team, I didn't hear it quite as much, especially the part about how advertising was secondary to the user. Maybe started not hearing this quite as much. But here's the twist on brainwashing, hazing, really well-written philosophy document, whatever we want to call it. It totally stuck with me. This phrase became a part of what I did. It became a part of the teams that I worked with. And, you could see it in the products that were being created. I mean, sometimes to the point of relentless user focus. I think about, the search page is one. If you think about how there's nothing on that search page, even today, it is so bare and so clean. It is focused on that use case. That's the prime example. Gmail came out not too earlier before that, and it was very revolutionarily about the user, not about slamming things into your inbox. It also applied to kind of the companies that we acquired. I remember I was there during the time of YouTube acquisition, and YouTube was built, by users for users, right? It's this kind of an entire platform based around user-generated content. It even applied to the work we did on the sales side. The user became our advertising partner. It was the person that we were selling to, and we had to make sure that everything we did worked for them. We weren't going to pitch products that didn't work. So you can kind of take this phrase and take it where you want. And a lot of people that either I worked with or worked at Google moved off to found other companies. They took it with them. If you just look around, Google founders coming from Google landed places like Xiaomi, Pinterest. These are companies that put like tech at the front of serving the user interest, right? Making technology accessible. Things like Lucidchart and Asana. I think if you've ever used those, you already start to feel that they are putting that end user first. Optimizely, ThoughtSpot. These are companies that really live that same exact brainwashed phrase. And every single one of them brought that thinking that they had and kind of started disseminating it. I would posit that in today's tech world, this product-led growth sort of was almost incubated by this rabid Google thinking around user-first product. If you go kind of back to those early years, it was really one of the dominating tech or software creation entities that was putting very, very user-first products out there. Before we were building for companies, we were building for users. So it's an interesting kind of just general trend I wanted to kick off and share with. So what does that look like? What does product and marketing alignment then look like at a big company who says, focus on the user and all else will follow? I think the couple of things we're going to recognize when we look at a really, really large company, I'm talking, moving up into the Google sizes. The first is that you're naturally going to have these overbuilt org structures. You're going to have very complex and overbuilt org structures. And those lead to two things. It leads to silos, and it leads to very disconnected efforts. This size company is when you get a marketing function that is just running as a marketing function. maybe they get some input from other teams, but they literally have their own goals, their own strategy, their own leadership. You see marketing running for marketing's sake. I think this large company also gave us what we now know as the product marketing function. The product marketing function was created and defined to be that connective thread, right? You had product management. Under there, we need a marketer. We need someone who understands the market needs. We need someone who puts emphasis on the buyer, like understanding the buyer's needs and pain points. Someone who can be skilled at positioning and messaging. Well, in a large company, if you've got marketing over here, product isn't going to get any of that. So the concept of a product marketer was really, this is probably the second time I've used this word, incubated in these large companies, right? Like you had to create a marketing function that lived within the product management structure. And I think conceptually, that's really good to recognize because we see product marketers everywhere now. But the way that function was created was really the first step in really aligning highly product focused organizations with their marketing functions. So just to continue on a little bit, I want to go down a bit more in scale and tell a story. So in one of my favorite client interactions in my time at Google, I was working heavily on mobile web experience. So we were going to our large partners, and I worked in the travel industry, as you can see by the client that I'll mention. But we were our job was to essentially go in and convince them of what was happening in the mobile space, in the market for mobile as ads, but also their product, and bring all the efforts from our clients to match that. That means their marketing teams and all such. We couldn't get their marketing teams to spend on mobile web. And there was a big blocker. And we did a lot of research. And we finally, and I'm talking about Airbnb here, we finally realized the reason that we couldn't do this is because Airbnb, from their conception and as they were building, is highly, highly, highly app focused. They were built as an app. They grew as an app. They invested in a native app. As we were talking about mobile web and Google search on mobile web specifically, and being there for the billions of searches that happen every day, we weren't getting any reception. So as a marketing team, they were not biting on that. They did not want to spend on search ads on mobile. So we thought, and we realized they're completely thinking in this app space. So all of a sudden, our marketing was dead in the water unless we started addressing their product and marketing together. And what we realized is Airbnb's strategy at that time was moving into global expansion. So they were going beyond their core markets to other markets, to India, to Southeast Asia, to Eastern Europe, places where they hadn't really been exposed before. And what they didn't realize is that the app was not the unit of commerce at that point. People, especially in Southeast Asia, these new users, this new market, were not downloading apps. They're expensive. They take a lot of bandwidth. They needed everything to be web-based. Well, we looked into then what is Airbnb's presence on the mobile web. We actually looked at their product. And this is the fun part of the story. I got to walk into the meeting, hold up the phone, and say, okay, let's see how your mobile web loads. In San Francisco, probably on corporate Wi-Fi as we were at the time, it took almost 17 seconds for their mobile website to load. Now, anyone on this call can calculate immediately the dollar value that has. And if the amount you came up with is really effing big, that is correct. So we literally put in front of them this product-related opportunity that if they close that gap, if they started delivering a mobile website that loaded in a second or less, they were going to be making massive strides in their global exposure. Okay, well, guess what? That then led to mobile ad spend, right? The marketing and the product had to be deeply tied together. Now, Airbnb was a smart company. Not only did they think this made sense, but they actually internally spun up a product team that built faster landing pages than Google's own fast landing page technology could deliver. So bringing product and bringing marketing and getting them to say, yes, we both need something is that point at which a lot of times you can take a dead in the water marketing play or sometimes a dead in the water product strategy that just isn't getting traction and actually create movement. So I tell that story as inspiration because even at very large companies, and actually Airbnb at the time wasn't that large, they were still pretty nimble. it's one of the ways that you can get very disconnected teams to align is when you bring product into the mix and you start talking about that end user experience. I think the other major trend that we're seeing from the marketing side that I think this applies to is really this trend of what we hear as the chief market officer. Latne Khanna at 6 Sense really does an amazing job of this. If you want to read more about this, read her stuff. But no longer is it just the marketer who takes whatever is given to them and then goes and quote unquote markets it, right? Sells it, peddles it left and right. Now the chief marketing officer's role has become even increasingly focused on product. It's involved in funding, right? How big is the problem that you are solving? It's involved in product positioning. What is the competitive landscape? It's involved in the actual features being developed. Are we finding product market fit? Do we have product market fit? Those questions are not the standard marketing questions that maybe some of us, learned in biz school. They are much bigger picture. And so I think as you look more into this idea of the chief marketing officer being the chief market officer, playing a larger role, one of the big things that comes onto the plate is the understanding of product. So as you get more senior, as you understand your role in a larger organization at a higher level, product is going to be a core component of that for everyone. And then as we kind of go down in scale, is there a question?
Yeah, well, so I was going to say, Mark actually said, chief market officer is the uniter of the GTM teams, which includes products. So he said spot on. But there was one, and it was more of like, how, you talked about like uniting them. Like what are a few tips that you could do to unite those?
So good. Okay, so actually my next slide gets into more actionable stuff, and I'll roll fast. My last point is it's going to look different at a small company, right? Like things are going to look very different. I won't go into kind of everything we did at Gated, but our company was built in a way where product and marketing were deeply, deeply intertwined. And if you've heard my podcast, it's all about, small teams, high growth. So I've really looked a lot at what product and marketing alignment looks at small companies. That's where I'm happy to answer lots and lots of questions. But I think that at these small companies, it's easier to find wins. There's fewer meetings, there's fewer barriers to you getting stuck in your silo. Everybody's closer to the ICP because you're all still in the discovery mode. You're closer to the data. So every first customer you get, both product and marketing are looking at the same data. And really to get wins at a small marketing company, you have to have that codependence. So good point. Let's go on to actually how you do this. I've got 3 big buckets, and then with each, I've got some actionable stuff. Nick, I promise to send you actual bullet points. So when we send this out to people afterwards, they'll have them, but I'm just going to talk. So if you're listening, you got to listen to me. The first area that I think is really important is pace. Pace matters. And I'm talking about the pace between your product team and your marketing team. The first to do is don't get too far ahead of your roadmap, marketing teams. Marketing teams like to start talking about things that are coming 6 months out, 9 months out, 12 months out. It's a good principle, but there is nothing worse for a hardworking marketer than looking back and seeing that you wasted your effort on something. Because if you get too far ahead of your roadmap and you're building some excitement, and then there's a pivot or there's a feature that doesn't get developed, you are literally looking at a pile of wasted time. So it's a little scary to not plan 9 months out, 12 months out, but don't get too far ahead of your roadmap. Don't, get in front of your skis, right? That's one of my favorite metaphors because it's already snowy outside where I am. So that's the first one. Pace matters. Don't get too far ahead. The second feels a little counterintuitive or opposite the first one, but it's not, which is move fast so you don't get bogged down. We talk about this a lot in marketing. Fail fast, move rapidly. The one tactical tip that I always use is if I'm talking to customers and I hear something confirmed 5 times, if I hear that an ad resonated 5 times, if I hear that they saw my message 5 times or they like this one feature 5 times, I put a check mark by it and I move on. Stop asking questions at that point. You've got a lot of people call it 8 or 10. That's fine. Depends how many customers you're talking to. But if I hear 5 people being like, yeah, that works, I'm going to check mark and I'm going to move on. And both the product and marketing team can operate with that pace. You will find people who want to get bogged down, and it's really important to keep moving. The last bullet point, so don't get too far ahead of your roadmap, move fast to not get bogged down. And then the third one is align your sprints and your cadence with product and marketing. So if as a marketing team, you haven't understood what cadence your product team is building on, that's the very bare minimum. You need to know, are they rolling out products every 2 weeks? Are they building on a month-long sprint cadence? Do they have quarterly goals? And then align to that. I might say that product could also align to marketing, but let's be honest, marketing often needs to align to product because they sometimes have more roadblocks, bottlenecks, and barriers that they're building around than we are. We can be a little more flexible. Okay, next bucket, communication matters. I know this sounds really broad. It sounds very general, but I have some specifically actionable tips here. The first one ties back to the pace and the cadence, which is set up structured communications with your product leaders. Talked on my podcast, actually this past week, the episode with Mark Huber, he said very, very clearly, he meets every 3 weeks with a head of product and every 1 week with his head of CS. You're going to find the pace that works for you, the cadence, but get those meetings on the book. Even if you meet for 10 minutes of an hour and then you both go back to work, get them on the book, put some rigor around actually talking with them as humans, not just as what are you working on, but like, how's it going? Are you feeling any pain points? What's stressing you out? Air that communication on very structured cadence with your product and marketing teams. Depending on the team, it might be just the leaders meeting. It might be a full happy meeting. Kind of depends on the team. So set up structured comms. The second bullet point tactically is overshare. One of the things I did at Gated was every end of the week, I would send out a 5-minute loom with what the hell marketing did that week. It's so easy, but if you miss it, you will feel the pain. It feels like extra work. It is worth it. I have seen it happen so many times. Just do it. It could be bullet points in an email. I would suggest a video like Loom. People love watching things as long as it's less than 5 minutes, but overshare.
Yeah, well, I was going to jump in real quick because Mark and I worked together at AirMeet before this, and every Monday he would do a Monday marketing minute. And so basically there was a few versions of it, but it was through Slack. It wasn't video. Sometimes it was video, but the amount of people that like found value in the over communication of what marketing was doing was just like mind blowing to me.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest, everybody thinks they're a marketer and everybody loves marketing. So also it gets like the creative juices flowing. People get excited. Sometimes they have great ideas too. Sometimes, Joe Schmo in engineering has really wacky, fun, creative things that come out. So, okay. So structured meetings, overshare. And then the last one is figure out your language. Give a few minutes to figure out the language that you're using. Sprints, campaigns, like does the product team understand what campaigns are in your existing org? And do you understand what goes into a sprint on their side? I like marketing sprints as well. So sprints may be a two-way language. Even the main metrics that you're rallying around, like, are we all talking about conversion rate the same? Because I've seen at many different orgs, conversion rate is completely, like, I'll actually go back slides real quick. This one was from, I meant to talk about Full Story is a product that I love because it brings product insight and marketing insight together. But, you're looking at dead clicks and rage clicks. Rage clicks are one of my favorite product tidbits. But in the end, you're looking at conversion impact. So having a shared language around metrics is super, super important. So the points for this one are set up the meetings, keep them, overshare from the marketing side, and figure out what your shared language is and be clear about it. Because sometimes you don't clarify it, and semantics can be a real B, if you know what I mean. Okay, last bucket. I love my general perspective matters. Yeah, put that on a t-shirt. Here are the tactical points that come with this one. Both teams need to have shared perspective on being flexible. I heard a great story from Trinity Wynn at User Gems. She talked about her team for a long time was using the 80-20 rule. Well, they were testing 80% of the time and doing run the business 20% of the time. So they had kind of a come to Jesus moment, and she realized what we really need to be doing is having clear structured growth 80% of the time and testing 20% of the time. So have a perspective on how you're approaching testing and running the business. 80/20 generally is 20% testing, but you never know. So make sure you've talked with your teams about that. The second bullet point around this is similar to the semantics from before, but get aligned on your goals. I have seen multiple small teams where the marketing team is trying to get users and the product team is building for revenue. Now, that doesn't seem that far apart, and it might not be in certain cases, but it can lead to a dramatic mismatch in what you're doing. And, vice versa. They could be totally different metrics, but that's just an example. If you're actually thinking about what you're building for in the wrong way, Gated was a big example of this because we actually, in our first product, we were building very focused on user growth, on more on like the revenue model. And then we moved into more of a pure user growth model. And it really changed the GTM efforts that we put out there. And it really changed the work we did on product. So figure out your balance, the 80/20 rule. Make sure you're aligning on the goals. And then the last one, and I think this is my favorite, is figure ways to roll marketing wins into the product. If you as a marketer are not thinking about this and not coming up with ideas and not touching base with your product team, you are missing some massive low hanging fruit. Are there moments in the product where a gentle nudge could refer a new user? Are there moments in the product where a gentle nudge could bump someone up in a pricing tier? There are so many growth loops that come out of product that need that little bit of marketing love. Maybe it's just the language. Maybe it's the way that you frame it. Maybe it's the loop that you then bring someone into. Like maybe it's simply, are we tracking this segment of users so we can remarket to them in some smart way? But if you're not looking for marketing touch points in your product, you are missing a huge, huge amount of wins. I've been prattling on for a bit. I'll leave you with my last quote. I do this all the time. I love high growth product and marketing together companies. I talk about the stories like all the time on my podcast, but I'm really excited to chat with anyone who wants to dig into theirs or ask questions specifically about theirs. I truly believe that a huge amount of wins, especially at earlier stage companies growing fast, come from good product marketing alignment. So yeah, here's a quote from Henry Ford. That's where you can find me if you want to grab my everything that I'm up to these days. And happy to take some questions and or bring up some other tangential things.
Love that. Love that you. So it's funny. I'm actually also using matcha. But fun side fact, like, well, not fun, but like, since I use gated all the time before, and like not having gated now, like I get bombarded daily, and I just want to it gets me so angry every single day. So like, I was like, I had to talk to you about that too, because I was like, I don't even know. I just hit spam on everything now.
Well, here's something that made my marketer heart happy that's related to product, just to tie it into the title, but bring it to gated. So when we wrapped up gated, and I won't go into everything why, I'm so sorry. I'm also sorry for myself because I've abandoned my inbox since I turned off gated. One of the things that I thought was really meaningful is we built a lot of gated around the mission. And so when we had to wrap up, I didn't just want to walk away. Like I wanted to make sure that we were leaving the amazing customers, the huge fans that we had with something. So number one, my favorite thing ever was we kept the domain. So if you can keep your domain and put something there, just as a marketer, it's so much easier on your heart than a 404 page. But the other thing we did is we actually open sourced our code. So we took all the code that we built from the product and it's open sourced. The link to GitHub is right there on gated.com. And our past head of customer success is actually spinning up a gated replacement. He misses it so much. So shout out to Co-Butler. It's got a whole new branding and name, but I'll put it in the notes or I'll put it in the chat for folks. But if you're desperately missing gated and you want to chat more about it, that's you can go sign up. I think it's coming out very soon. So, I didn't even see all the chat happening. I just signed over there, guys.
Yeah, there was lots of good stuff over there. Anyone else have any questions? I mean, everyone's just kind of been really like agreeing with what you said, like spot on.
I have one other kind of thought and shout out tied to product. I was talking to someone the other day and they said, and this kind of made me sad in my heart. They said, well, I don't really have a product. I'm just working on building community. And I went, I mean, I can imagine what you'd say, Nick. I actually want to hear your response. I'll tell you what I say. What would you say to that?
I would say, I don't know. I need to think about that for a second. What would you
Can I tell you
say?
what I said? I said, "Oh, no, no, no. Your community is a product. It's absolutely a
That's,
product." I mean, so
that's
one of
true.
the things that I'm working on now is called Wednesday Women, and we're raising visibility for executive women leaders. Now, on the outside, that just feels like a mission. It doesn't feel like a product. Well, there's two things that I would say I'm doing. The first is I'm actually working to create a product within it because that's how I roll. We're actually kind of building some neat products we'll be releasing in January. But the second thing is your product is, in the most vague terms, it is all the touch points that someone has with your brand. So you
Mm,
can think about, if you're in events, your product are the events. If you're in a community, your product is the Slack communications. There is product in things that feel less tech product. Oh, Mark wants to jump in.
Yeah, no, Melissa, I love this, and Nick, thank you for doing this. It's super insightful, interesting. The way because it triggered my thought when you were talking about positioning, product marketing, product management, alignment, and then this point right now, which is you build different positioning for a company versus positioning for a person. And when you think about community type positioning, which is a product, it's more at the individual level in terms of how you position that versus a product that you're trying to position more to a company to some degree. It's more at the solution, of course, product level, right? And like, I just feel like there's two sets of positioning, and most product marketers, most everyone in marketing focuses on the company level type positioning, and the good ones weave in really emotive and emotional and behavioral based things that are not even just about the problems and the value,
Yeah.
but the altruistic, the self actualization that happens as well when the product is being adopted and used. But it's not common.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, you can even think about you talk about even like personal brands being built. We go even further, more vague than community, right? The product is the person, right? You can extend the concept of product and all of these principles that we talked about to uh, productize almost anything and to treat it as if it were a hands-on product. I mean, heck, all the CPG folks will probably tell us that software isn't even a product because you can't touch it.
I agree. And say one last thing and see how you respond to this. I believe the best of the best companies, even maybe not the best of the best, but definitely the best of the best companies have a Bible. Do you think Google had a Bible?
I do. I believe they had a Bible, and we wrote a very, very distinct manifesto at Gated. That was a big part. I think there is something you believe that rallies people around it. I think as companies grow that massive, it's hard to maintain such a rabid adherence to the Bible. There's a lot of apostates and schisms in the church as things get larger, but I do believe it, and I think so much of what Google built was very in line with that, especially in the early years.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for your time. Saw the same kind of thing at HubSpot, and Google was obviously, and Apple was a very big inspiration to HubSpot. So yeah, it's yeah, everything you said, I think people should study and kind of understand how to apply it to then their business. I learned this from David Cancel, the CEO of Drift, 5-time co-founder. It's better to innovate instead of invent.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, I think that's what the greats do.
There was another one. I always use this when I was talking about website improvements. But it was evolution, not revolution, right? Yeah.
100%. Thank you again, Melissa.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for jumping in. I like seeing your face jump in there, Mark.
Amazing. Well, this was fantastic. We'll share the slides with everyone as well. So it'll be inside Club PF. We'll share all that good stuff with you, the recording, everything else. Melissa, like, where can people go to? I know it says it right here, but like, are all your links on there to like LinkedIn as well?
Yeah. So that's what I love about my matcha page is it literally will tell you, I'm working on Wednesday Women. It's got my podcast on there. It's got a link to my LinkedIn, of course. And it's got a link to kind of a new product that I've been spinning up as well. So all of Melissa is contained in one place there.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was fantastic. I learned a ton. I'm sure everyone else learned a ton. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of people that listen to this on demand and reach out to you because of how valuable it was. So thank you. We'll catch you all next time on the next episode, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Bye, everyone.